Hayley, take it away.
Cool. So I'm Hayley Watts. You've already met my colleague Grace Marshall. We're both productivity ninjas working in the UK and further afield with global training company Think Productive. So Think Productive is about 10 years old now. We have offices in the US, in Canada, Australia, doing some work in the UAE, as well as Western Europe and Brighton and Hove, the centre of our kind of global operations. So we're going to talk with you today about email, and we're focusing on, it says here, how to make your email life suck less. We're thinking about behaviours and approaches to email that can make the whole thing seem less overwhelming, less stressful. There's lots of words being used to describe email. For those of you who've just joined us, we asked people to share in one word how they're feeling about email, and overwhelming, distracting, stressful all came up a number of times. So we're going to start off by thinking about what's the problem with email. Like, why has a webinar about email attracted over 250 people? So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. That's we're going to ask you to head straight for the chat and just share what are the problems that you're struggling with in relation to dealing with your email. Liam was very fast off the bat there. It exists was the simple problem. People expecting you to be online all of the time. And I don't know about you, Grace, but I'm certainly finding with a lot of the clients that I work with, that problem has got worse in a lockdown situation where people who are perhaps used to seeing each other in an office environment aren't doing that anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's overwhelming, so it's noisy. I'm seeing people saying, I'm losing things, I'm worried about losing things because there's just too much of it.
Yeah.
So volume's definitely a problem.
Yeah. And there's lots of things coming through on the chat. I didn't catch who said it there, but somebody had said something about that I'm trying to send less so that I get less, but there's still a lot.
Yeah, definitely. There's a problem around expectations. So people expecting super quick reply. And somebody here saying, I work in customer services, so they expect you to always be there available for them. So that it feels like it's constant, it's never ending, but it's also always on.
Yeah, that's really tricky, isn't it? And difficult to prioritize multiple projects is coming up. And Lawrence has said that it takes up so much of my day, like the constant never-endingness of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the stats support that as well, don't they? We've got a study here done not too long ago, I guess, although it's already a couple of years old. But on the average day, office workers are getting around 121 emails, or at least 121 emails a day. We're sending about 40 emails, so clearly we're sending those emails to more than one person. We're spending about 3.5 hours a day checking our work emails. And as somebody pointed out in the chat, that's as well as all the other communication tools we've got going on. So things like Messenger, things like chat. Email is still a major constant distraction that's preventing us from engaging in proper, meaningful work, as it says there. So it's a large problem, and it's just getting bigger. So it's just getting more. The numbers are only ever going up. And if we're spending on average 40% of an 8-hour day on work email, that's not including personal email, and the numbers keep going up, is the percentage that we're spending on email continuing to go up as well? So yes, email is here to stay. It's not a problem that's going away, even with other things like chat and Messenger and things like that. But it's also, as Nicola's pointed out there in the chat, it's getting worse with lockdown. Yes. So with us not being able to see each other in the office and to be able to have those conversations, that sense of it being noisy and the volume being too much is just getting more and more. And the problem is it's distracting. Email is the major source of distraction when it comes to being able to get work done. This comes from a study done by Microsoft back in 2004, so quite a while ago now. But they found that a 1-minute email distraction would cost people on average 15 minutes to recover their attention and get back to the thing that they were doing before. So if you imagine 15 minutes just to recover from a 1-minute interruption, it would only take 4 badly timed interruptions to suck up a whole hour of your day. So sometimes when we feel like we don't have enough time, maybe actually what we don't have enough of is our attention to make good use of our time. And in fact, a more recent study in 2014 suggests that the recovery time is now something more like 23 minutes and 15 seconds. So it would only take 3 badly timed interruptions to take up a whole hour of your day. So yeah, it's gotten so noisy that it's costing us time, but also it's costing us more than that. It costs us our mental capacity, our ability to do good work as well. So Hayley, do you want to take it on to the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
It lowers your IQ. So I'm not suggesting that you recreate this experiment. King's College London did it for us. They found that being distracted by email is worse for our brain than being on drugs. So not only does it cost us our time, but it also costs us our ability to do good thinking, our ability to concentrate, our ability to be creative, all the good stuff that our brain is designed to do, that we have to do as part of our jobs, that we get paid for. You know, the value that we create at work is from the thinking that we do. So yeah, next time you think, oh yeah, I'll just check some emails and things like that, it's like, oh, is it really worth the cost in that? The other problem with email is that we tend to see it as the default. It tends to become our default tool. So it's like, oh, I need to say something to someone, I'll send them an email. Or I need to get some work done. I need to get someone to get some work done, I'll send an email. So we tend to default to email without really thinking about, what do I want to use this tool for? And is it actually doing the job? So what is it that I want to happen? What's the impact? So what's my intention with this email, but also what's the impact I want to have? And is it having that impact? I remember working with somebody a while ago who managed quite a large team, and she found that she had to say to her team, do you know what, guys, if you really want me to see what's important, if you really want me to pay attention to something, you're going to have to stop sending me everything else, because there's so much coming in, I am losing it. So the impact was being lost. The intention was, I really need your eyes on this, but the impact was, it's so noisy, I can't see it because I'm seeing everything else as well. So we have to start to remember, maybe email is just one of those mediums that we have to have conversations or to get work done, and maybe asking ourselves, is this the best medium? And how do we use it in a way that it gets the impact that we want?
There was somebody saying a moment ago in the chat, they miss phone calls, like the art of just having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So having, and some conversations are not designed for email. If you've ever played email ping pong, and I noticed somebody said ping pong as their word for describing email, you'll know that like sometimes email is just, it might have been the default tool, but it's not the best tool to have. So if you need to be having back and forth conversation, maybe a phone call might be better, or even arranging a time to be on something like Teams together so you can hash out those kind of quick conversations and those quick back and forths. But it comes down to asking that question. What's the impact I want here? What is it that I want people to do? Or what's the message I want to get across? And am I using the right tool for the job? And am I using it in a way that's actually going to get it across? Or is there a better tool to use that for that particular piece of work?
So what we're saying then is that there's a number of challenges with email. And one of them, which has come up a lot of times in the chat, is there are just too many. You've mentioned the fact that it's kind of never ending, particularly if you work in a global environment. You turn off your inbox perhaps at the end of the evening, and you close down your stuff for the day, and then when you log on tomorrow, there's all the stuff from everybody else's working day over in another part of the world. So it can be distracting, and the impact that has on our ability to concentrate. And as Grace said there, it's become kind of the default tool, the way that people communicate with each other. And there was an interesting point made in the chat around, well, you try and have less meetings, but then you end up having more emails. So you try and have more conversations, but then more meetings get put in the calendar. So there's kind of a tension there in terms of the balance between the two. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do about this? We're all feeling the pain and experiencing what some of the challenges are. We want to share with you some thoughts around what we could do about this. And you can kind of pick and choose. You might go with implementing all of these ideas. You might decide that there are a couple of things there that are going to help make your life easier. There isn't just one thing that everybody can do that will solve the problem. Like many things around this productivity and well-being stuff, it's about choosing lots of small things that might help and work for you. So one of our values at Think Productive is this idea of psychology before technology. We talk about having weapon savvy as one of our characteristics of a productivity ninja. And being weapon savvy is about recognizing that there's tools, there's technology out there that can help you, but actually how you choose to use that technology, how you choose to interact with it can be the thing that makes it help you rather than making it feel more stressful. So it sounds like that might be somewhere that we could go with some of this to help us. I think we have a poll for you to share your thoughts. We would like to know, how often do you check your email?
So the options there are once a day, 2 to 5 times a day, it's always on, or if it's something else, tell us what that might be in the chat. And if anyone can't see the polls for any reason, you're welcome to give your answer into the chat as well.
You can see the votes are still coming through thick and fast, so we're going to give you a few more moments. It'd be great to get as many people as we can sharing their thoughts on that. Ross is sharing that 2 to 4 times an hour for checking in with the email. And Nicola shared, I try to work offline, but then I need to check a calendar or something and have to go back in again. So if you're using Outlook, you can change the default setting. The default setting is that you open up Outlook and it goes into your inbox. You can open it up to be your calendar or your task list, for example. Absolutely. So I think most people who are going to vote have done so. So overwhelmingly, 82% of you, it's always on. Yeah, okay. And we've got 3 people, which is 1%, are going into their email once a day. I, at the moment, probably do mine. I'm probably in the 2 to 5 category. What about for you, Grace?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm in the 2 to 5 category as well. Yeah, I know some of us, some of our colleagues, our Ninja colleagues, have very strict kind of like 3 times a day or even once a day. Yeah, I tend to find it's kind of usually about 3-4 times a day, depends on what's going on. But I think what we're really saying here is kind of getting into a point where you start thinking of email as something that's not always on, but something that's deliberately on or deliberately off, so that you have an on-off relationship with it rather than it always be on. Because yeah, as some of you point out, it's scary, 82%. Yep, a lot of us do this, and it's a default behavior. And again, it's something that we realize Outlook is on, and it's just kind of in the background. Some of you might have already turned notifications off, as I can see on the chat there, which is a great tip. Definitely, we do suggest that you turn notifications off because it is so noisy, and as human beings, we're designed to respond to things that ping and pop up. It's part of our human nature, and the technology is designed to take advantage of that. So people who design software, design apps, employ psychologists to design it in a way that grabs your attention, because your attention is their currency. So I think next slide, Hayley, says that actually one of the quick wins we can do is to turn off notifications and to just quieten that noise. I think by default, most applications we download either onto our computer or onto our phone tends to have like 3 different ways of notifying us by default. Why don't we switch that around and just turn everything off by default and only turn on the notifications for the things we actually want to know? So for me, if somebody's calling me, I want to know. But if there's a new email that's landed in my inbox or a group chat on WhatsApp, with extra puppy pictures, as lovely as that is, I don't need to know right away when it arrives. I can deal with that when I'm ready to. So yeah, so turning off notifications is a great way of getting the tool to start to work for you, which is that thing of weapon savvy that Hayley mentioned earlier.
And there's some really good conversation in the chat. I think somebody said earlier on, like, but my job is email, it's driven by email, and then a reflection that actually maybe not. And somebody mentioned, I think John says here, someone mentioned urgent stuff coming in. I don't think email is the right medium for anything urgent. So yeah, we like that.
We do not email the fire department when there is a fire. So email was never designed to be an emergency tool. So if you think back to the physical post, the days when we used to get physical post, I think there was a day when the post used to arrive twice, but nowadays it's only once a day. How would you feel if the postie started knocking on your door every 2 minutes to deliver every single piece of mail individually? You would probably have words, wouldn't you? And so the same thing holds true with email. Just because you can get an email at any given time doesn't mean that you need to be there ready to receive it and to pounce on it to respond straight away. So we need to start to get a different mindset around email. Yes, people can send email at any time of the day, but it doesn't mean you need to respond and reply straight away at all times of the day. So if it's always on, we are always distracted. So we need to start to have a different relationship with email, where we have times when we come on to deal with emails, but also times when we come off, so that we can get the work done outside of our inbox, because the emails are supposed to be a tool that support us. Yes, it is, we can't get away without it, most of us, but it's not the job. We don't have email as part of our job title. It's supposed to be a tool that supports us, not something that is kind of demanding our attention. And as we'll come on to later, some of that will mean managing other people's expectations on this. But I think first of all, we need to manage our own expectations on this. So we need to kind of maybe challenge our own inner FOMO of going, but I'll miss something if I don't look at my emails. And maybe asking ourselves, flipping that question, what am I missing by looking at my emails all the time? Well, what am I not getting around to thinking about? And am I happy with that trade-off?
And we're talking here about email. A lot of this logic applies to other forms of communication as well. Kind of people are saying, well, what about chats? What about all those other tools that we have? So I think the same logic applies. And some of my clients are working in environments where their clients are big corporate companies, and they'll say, oh, well, I've got to respond as soon as an email comes in from that person. It's like, well, hold on a minute. If your email is turned off, you're actually delivering the work for that client. So we kind of need to move away from this idea of kind of responding quickly is the measure of success. So there's some great thoughts coming through on the chat around this. So what do you think about this idea of always on is always distracted and turning off the notifications? Have you tried it already? And has it worked for you? Lorraine is saying, I turn the notifications off, but I still feel tempted to check. It took me a long time to get used to this idea of not checking my email. You're checking to see if there's email there, but there's going to be some emails there. That took me a while to get used to. I have another client that I work with, and the learning and development person came back to me, and like the day after a course, I was like, I've turned my notifications off. It's amazing. I love it. So they got used to that really quickly. What else do we have? What else are you saying in the chat?
So Joanne's saying turning off all my notifications completely changed my ability to concentrate.
Nicola says she doesn't know where to turn them off. So we can talk you through that at the end if you want to give us a reminder. If not, you can Google it, but we can talk you through how to do that.
Yeah, there's a great shout there from Richard saying, I have a great app called App Block that prevents me from opening emails, social media apps, etc. during preset hours on my Android smartphone. So using the tech to work for you, that's a nice weapon savvy move, definitely. Yeah, and we've got some people who are saying, yep, I do have times when I switch it off. So when I go offline to catch up on some backlog. So these are all different ways of doing that. And I think it's just kind of challenging your own inner expectation around that, and maybe changing your default. Because the other thing about doing email at set times rather than always on is that you actually find you're better at processing those decisions that you need to make. So batch processing emails makes you much more decisive, a little bit clearer, and a little bit more ruthless as well. So rather than treating every single email as equally important when it arrives, you'll find that you're able to filter through, actually, there's the noise, there's the stuff I really need to pay attention to, easier when you do it in batches rather than when you do them one by one. So yeah, Haley, talk us through a little bit about some of the culture stuff. We've hinted at it already, but I think we need to dive into it a little bit more.
And there was a couple of comments in the chat there, like, I wish my colleagues could sign up to this way of working. So I've worked in organisations where I've implemented this, and other people's email habits may have been completely unhelpful, unhealthy, unproductive. But I've stuck with this for me because I know it works. So even if you're working in that kind of environment, then have a go at implementing some of these ideas and techniques. But the ideal, of course, would be to change the culture of email and how people are interacting with it. So culture change starts with people's behaviours, right? The culture is made up of how people around here behave. So the first part of that is we can talk about this, right? Email is a tool that's been designed so we no longer need to talk to each other. So what we need to do is actually to talk to each other about how we use it, how we want to use it. So for example, at Think Productive, my colleagues will know if they need something from me and they need a response today, they're going to need to text me or call me. I will see that and I will respond to them, and I will know that they need a response today because that's how they're trying to reach out to me. I know if they need something at some point, that's going to come to me via Slack, which is the internal communication channel we need. So managing those expectations is about having some conversations about what does urgent look like, what is actually urgent and what can wait, and having some clarity around what's the best way to communicate that urgent stuff to each other. We need to move away from this idea that the fastest response is the best response. I'm sure that none of you send an email and then sit back and I've got nothing to do now till that person replies. And yet when we receive an email, many people are treating it as if the fire alarm is going off and it requires some urgent, I've got to do that straight away because that person is now waiting for my response. They're not, they've got other things to do. And if they are sat back just waiting for your response, it really should have been a call. And should it even be an email? I'm sure that many of you might be able to head to your inboxes and find ongoing conversations that could have been a 2-minute phone call and now you've got a 10 message email chain. So just because somebody sends something to you via email doesn't mean your response has to be via email. So I'm a school governor and I received an email in relation to something that was happening at school. And I thought, actually, this is a really complex issue. Rather than trying to explain and justify why we've decided to do that as a governing board, I just need to pick up the phone and have a conversation with this person to understand what it is that they're concerned about and what they need to know. So that's a good start, I think.
Definitely.
Grace, tell us about our communications manifesto.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that we sometimes work with teams on to create is what we call a comms manifesto. So it used to be an email manifesto. Now it's comms manifesto because there's more than email. So as you've mentioned already, there's lots of different channels of communication we use. And the thing we need to do is have a discussion to agree what the rules of engagement are, and then to have that written down as well so we can refer back to it. Because we tend to have these thoughts in our own heads and we moan about it. Maybe we moan about it to each other sometimes, but we don't actually agree a way forwards. So things like, what channel do we use for what kind of communication? How often do we use CC? And when should we not use CC? Somebody's mentioned on the comment there, reply all is used far too much. So, can we maybe agree that you just reply to reply to one person? Or maybe those thank you emails, there's far too many of those. Can we just agree that thank you is read? Or at least just reply to one person rather than reply to all with lots of thank yous? So you can have little rules in there just to clarify, like, how are we going to use this well as a tool to support our work and support our communication rather than as something that distracts us and disrupts our work. Some very basic things to include definitely in there are things like expected response times, so that people know how often they need to be checking or looking or tending to a particular communication tool. Because if you don't have those expected response times, it will just be a race to the bottom. Everyone will end up expecting everything to be instant. So I would encourage you to maybe agree those as a rule, maybe internally within your team or within your organization. Great question from Anwen coming up. Would you put those rules in your signature? you might decide to put some of it in your signature. I probably wouldn't put the whole comms manifesto in your signature, although you could maybe, if you had that comms manifesto somewhere else online, you could have a link to it to go, here's how I use email, and maybe try that. But maybe some of the expectations around your habits on emails could be part of making your expectations clear. So maybe being clear. So Hayley, I think we've got some examples, haven't we, of some of our own internal comms that happen. So there's Jess there saying, look guys, I'm going offline to focus on these 3 things. I'll be available over the phone for any emergency. So it might be in certain situations that you let people know, like this is, I'm going to go dark. There might be those of you working flexible hours at the moment, trying to juggle homeschooling and different things. So it might be that there are certain times when you're not even working. And these are the sort of things that could be useful. So it could be like, these are the hours that I'm working right now. I've seen those on email signatures. I've seen some email signatures saying, look, I send emails when I'm working. I don't expect my hours to be the same as yours. So you come back to me when you're ready to. Those kind of things can be useful as well. We do also have, I think, Hayley, your auto response is on, isn't it? So if somebody emails you, what's the auto response they get?
So usually I would check my emails once a day. If I'm delivering a training course, then I'm not going to be dipping into my inbox in the breaks and all that kind of stuff. So mine says something along the lines of, thank you for getting in touch. If it's urgent, please call me. And there's a link there for people to book an appointment in my calendar, 15-minute slot. So if they want to have a conversation, then they can book that straight away. Nobody ever calls me as a result of sending me an email and seeing that. Yeah. And I'm not dealing with life and death situations in my job. That's not what I'm doing. In my previous job, I was the CEO of a charity, and I had something very similar in my out of office. And I think in my last 6 months of working there, I probably had 2 or 3 calls. One of them was actually urgent. So it's just a way of managing people's expectations.
Yeah, definitely. There's a great comment coming in from Hannah in the chat saying you can also consider this from well-being stance. So, if you've received this email outside of your normal working office hours, there is no expectation that you will respond before you're next at work. It will have been sent because it fits with my working pattern. We all need to maintain a healthy balance and take care. So, yeah, and I've seen some great email signatures along those lines, which just helps to remind us that email is an asynchronous tool. I send stuff, you get it, you send stuff back, I get it. It's not supposed to be, I'm waiting for you to reply right now. So it's just reminding us to treat email that way, definitely.
There's a question about opinions on delayed delivery for emails sent in the evening. I'm a fan. I don't work in the evening very often. It's very rare. Occasionally with this homeschooling situation, I have made a deliberate choice. I'm not going to do that during the day. That can be done in the evening. And I do always delay send them. But recognizing, it's not the most reliable function, perhaps in Outlook, if that's what you're using. You have to be logged in, I think, for the emails to be sent. So I think as long as you're clear that you're not expecting people to be checking their emails and dealing with stuff in the evening and weekends. And I think if you're a senior leader in an organization, that is much, much more important to be modeling that good behavior.
And also, I would say just in certain circumstances, so if you're working with a team across multiple time zones, or if you're working with other colleagues who might be working in the evening, then actually not delaying the send could be helpful for them, because then you send it to them, they work on it when they're ready, they send it to you, you deal with it when you're ready. So I think the expectation is probably more important than putting restrictions on to say, do not send anything after 5 o'clock. It's like saying, in certain situations, it can be helpful, but in other situations where maybe you're working different time zones and flexible hours, then having just the expectation is enough. And that means that people can choose to do email when they choose.
Just as we move on, there's a comment in there about, well, I could create my own manifesto and then a colleague creates one that's different. So we're suggesting that that's something that would be agreed as a team. Mm-hmm. If you're in a large organisation, it might be easier to do that in your team rather than across the organisation. Let's think for a moment about switching off. We've kind of started talking about this idea of after hours emails, and my neighbour was sharing with me the other week that in a working from home environment, she's working much longer hours because everybody in the house is a grown up, and that's kind of what they're all doing. So they've got into this habit of everybody just working like 12, 13-hour days. And that doesn't help us to focus and to concentrate. When I'm on leave, I always take my work emails off my phone so that they're not there as a temptation. And my colleagues all know that if they need me to confirm dates for training and that kind of stuff, that they can give me a call. Grace, tell us about decision fatigue.
Yeah, so here's one of the reasons why we need to get into the habit of switching off from emails and switching off from work generally, because our ability to make good judgment decisions deteriorates with every decision that we make. And the only way to recover that is by taking breaks, and taking proper breaks, not just I'm going to take a break from one screen and open up another screen and start checking other emails, but actually taking a proper break. So if we don't take breaks, we're not able to do our best work. That's what it boils down to. So taking breaks is good for our well-being, but it's also vital for our productivity. So even just getting into the habit, it's tempting sometimes when you see your laptop, or when you get, oh, I'll just check emails, and oh, there's something that's come in, I want to be on top of things. But actually, by doing that, all we're doing is staying connected. That's helping us, our connectivity, but it's not helping our productivity. So we need to start getting into the habit of switching off, and knowing that that means that when we come back on, we are better and we're more equipped and well equipped to deal with what's come in. We can make better decisions that way.
So very often, I think when you're dealing with your email and you just think, oh, I'll put a flag on that, or I'll send it back to myself so it comes up at the top, it's because you're not in that decision-making kind of mode. So we don't want to do email at the time of the day where our energy and our focus is at its very best, but we don't want to do it in our lowest points either. I think lots of people are making comments about Ross's fantastic point here in the chat. How many people have ever received any type of formal training on how to use email effectively? Guessing less than 1%. People should be trained on email, just like you would train someone to operate heavy machinery. So we like that. We've got loads of questions, so we will come to those in just a moment. So if you have got questions and you've put them in the chat and we've missed them, I do apologise. If you want to head to the Q&A section, we will get through as many of those as we can. What would you recommend to do on a break to switch off completely? Yeah, move. Not go into your personal inbox and look at your personal email. So we do a course called Getting Your Inbox to Zero. And it says there, it did what it said on the tin. So we explain to people during that course how to manage your email going forwards once your inbox is down to zero, to make it easier to manage, less stressful and easier to interact with. And we give you the tools in the workshop to get your inbox down to zero, and we help and support people to do that. So there's loads of details on that on our website. We come in and we do that in a bespoke way for you and your business. Grace, I'll share a link to this in the chat. Do you want to just tell people a bit about 6 Weeks to Ninja?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a public course that I'm running in 2 weeks' time, starting on Tuesday, the 23rd of February. It's designed to be a bit of an email, not an email support group, a productivity ninja support group. So it will cover everything that we normally cover in our full day workshop, in our 90-minute session, and there'll be some email stuff in there as well. So the idea is that you'll have everything you need to get your ninja on, and to deal with email, but also more than email. It's the workload, it's the expectations, it's things like saying no, it's things like procrastination, and the idea is it's set up in weekly blocks, so 6 weeks, a couple of hours each week, where you'll get some good ideas, but also you'll have support in between to put things into action and to actually make it happen, because that's where the magic is.
Oh, and there's some people sharing in the chat there that they've either done the course or read chapter 4 in Graham's book, and it's really helped. Some of you may need to head off now. We're going to stick around and answer some questions. I have shared my email address and Grace's email in the chat, so do get in contact with us. We won't respond straight away. So let's head to the Q&A section. So Rita's saying, I've got 2,000 emails in my inbox, how to deal with them and get them down to 100. Well, we want to get them down to zero. So as we said, We've shared some places you can go to find that. So chapter 4 of Graham's book. And I think it's less about the number. Okay, so I've had people on a training course. I had somebody once who had more than 98,000 emails in his inbox. I remember taking part in this course myself as a delegate, having 500 emails, and it felt hugely overwhelming. I was really embarrassed that Graham, who I've worked with in a previous life, was going to come and see how many emails I had. It feels stressful, right, regardless of what the number is. But using the same tools and techniques got me down from 500. It got this delegate on another course that I ran down from 98,000. So it is possible.
A great question coming up here from Colin, who says, how to deal with an email, oh, hang on, this keeps moving. How to deal with an organization that lives in emails. So all emails need answering, but I am trying the ninja switch it off and only process 2 or 3 times a day. That means I can be sometimes out of sync with an email that needs instant answers. So Colin, I reckon this is I love that you're role modeling it. I love that you're pioneering that. And I think the more that you do it, the more it will catch on, and other people will go, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. But also, I think other people start noticing how much more focused you are, how much more you can deliver by not living in your inbox. So it's almost leading by example and showing the way that way. So I would say for you, maybe you have the conversation with your key stakeholders. So the people who really matter, let them know that this is what you're doing. So if they know not to expect instant responses, let them know how to get hold of you in emergency. If it's appropriate, you might want to consider putting like maybe an out of office response or an email signature thing to let people know this is how you're dealing with emails. And if you need to have any certain conversations, it might be worth reiterating the reason why you're doing it. So it's not that you don't care about what they're sending you. It's not that you don't want to look at it. It's actually that you care about doing a good job. You're caring about giving your best response, not the fastest response. So maybe having some of those conversations will help with that as well.
Cool. And there's a lovely question here from Teresa. How to cope with duplication? WhatsApp, Teams, texts, emails. And so when Grace talked about the comms manifesto earlier, there was real clarity there about this is what we use for what type of communication. So just having that discussion as a team and thinking, well, actually, yeah, we're going to use WhatsApp to talk about social stuff, maybe things that don't have anything to do with work, like what we're watching on Netflix or what book we're reading or a TED talk that we liked. Whereas you might use text if it's something urgent and you need a response from somebody straight away, and emails for less urgent things. So it's just about thinking what works for you and what works for your team. Now says, I have very large number of emails in my inbox. I haven't got the time or energy to delete them. And she's asking for some help with that. So my suggestion would be depending on how old those things are, right? So if those emails are, I don't know, more than 3 months old, is anybody going to be waiting on you for some of those things? So you might want to create an email attic. You know, you put stuff in the attic, don't you, when you're not quite ready to let go of it yet. So you might want to kind of just move all those older ones into a file and then work with some of the others that exist. We can come in and do the Inbox to Zero workshop to help you with that. And you can have a look at the chapter 4 in Graham's book. And I think it's been shared in the chat there. The book's called How to Be a Productivity Ninja by Graham Alcott.
Question here from Alice saying, how do we manage emails when our email inbox is essentially an overwhelming to-do list? I think my answer to that is don't use email as your to-do list. So email is the inbox. It's like the doormat where the post lands. And then you pick it up and decide what things you take to your to-do list. Not everything that lands in your inbox is something for you to do. But it's really hard to find those things if it's just all muddled up in everything else.
I'm just scrolling through the questions here just to see if there are kind of common themes and one that's been asked in different ways. So shared inboxes. Hannah's sharing, I've managed looking after my own email, but then we have a general finance inbox, which is shared by other people, but I seem to be the only one that's trying to clear it. So very often I see 2 things happening when I go into organizations and people are sharing an inbox in that way. One thing is that everybody dips in and does the nice, easy things, the things that they like doing, and that leaves a whole load of other stuff sat there for somebody else to deal with. Sometimes somebody's going in and they're looking to see what's there and they're just distributing it to the right people, which is fine. It creates a problem when you've got a shared inbox where you've got 3 or 4 people who are all dipping in and out all day. So I worked in an organisation once where actually somebody took responsibility for doing that for the week. So they were monitoring that inbox that week, and they farmed things out to the right people to deal with. Equally, you might decide that somebody's going to have, anything that comes in within this time slot is your responsibility. I think the key thing there is to have a system rather than to have everybody in there all the time, duplicating effort, ignoring the stuff that they can leave for somebody else.
Yeah, great. There's a question and an answer here from Marie Claire. How do you make the calendar come up first when you open in Outlook? It's in the advanced options. So I'm just letting you know in case other people might have that same question as well. So in advanced options, you can change the startup page to be in your calendar rather than in your inbox.
So Lawrence is asking if there's going to be a recording of the session. So yes, there will be.
Yeah, absolutely. And when saying, can you turn off emails but still stay available on Teams for emergencies? Yeah, that could be your way of doing that. Just make sure that people who use Teams are only using it for emergencies, maybe, and that you're not getting some other kind of chatter coming in on Teams. So it's just making sure that you don't have to filter through a whole load of noise to notice that emergency. That's the key thing there.
Ravika's asked a question in the chat about how to avoid missing meetings if Outlook is closed. And I assume that's because the meetings are in your calendar and you need to know that they're happening. I don't know how different people deal with that. I tend to go into my calendar. It's not in the same place as my email, but I tend to just jot down at the beginning of the day, just on a post-it note, what meetings I have and when they're going to be. So very low tech option for you there.
Or if you have Teams open but email closed, you can see your calendar on Teams as well. And then work offline as well. So if you're working offline, then you won't get the notifications coming in for the new stuff, but you will still get the calendar notifications. Or just turning off the notifications on email. That's the other way.
And Dominic is asking a question about storing emails in folders or leaving them in the inbox and use the search to find stuff. So yeah, if it's something you need to keep hold of and you think you might need for reference, just pop it in a reference folder and then use the search function to find things there.
Question on where can we find the recording for this? That's a really good question, Ellie. I'm not sure. I think everyone's registered for the session. So I'm sure that we'll be able to find a way of letting you know how to find it. I think previous sessions that we've run like this have then gone on to YouTube, but we'll get it to you. Our fantastic logistics team will sort it out all in the background and they will get the link to you.
Nell's asking, how can I sign up for the 3-hour workshop as an individual? So I don't think we have any of those coming up at the moment. The best option would be for you to do Grace's 6-week to Ninja. I promise you it will be well worth it.
Absolutely. So we are at 2:46. Our official finish time was 1 minute ago. Hayley and I are very happy to hang around, so we can do a little bit more unofficial after show if anybody has any further questions. But just wanted to kind of honour those of you who set aside the 45 minutes and need to go somewhere else. So thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you here. Hope that's been useful. I know there are so many other questions that we can answer on email, but I hope that's been useful to kind of just get you thinking about changing your relationship with email. So from one that's maybe noisy and demanding and never ending and a bit default to maybe one that is clearer, more deliberate, and one that supports you rather than demands from you. So yeah, great to see all those kind of thank yous coming through.
Yes,
I can see there are definitely some ninjas in the room who found this as a useful refresher. Excellent. And we do want to help. So, keep in touch, come and check out the courses. Tell your workplaces about the Inbox to Zero workshop. So if at the moment you're the only one who wants to come, I'm sure there will be more. I'm sure you'll have colleagues who will find that really helpful as well. So just get in touch with us and we can talk through getting that arranged for you.
So we still have a whole load of unanswered questions, but it's very difficult to see if the people who asked those questions are still here. So we're just going to give people a few moments to leave the session if that's what they would like to do. And then we can head back answer some of those questions if people want to stick around for the after show.
Okay. So
I love that there's a search function. We can search to see who's still here. So Rita's still here, and Rita has asked, I have lots of folders plus my inbox, and sometimes I can't remember where I filed an email. What can I do? So rather than having lots of small folders with a few emails in, have one big reference folder and use the search function to pull out the things that feel that are most relevant to what you're looking for. There's research that shows that people in organizations, the more senior they are, the more time they spend searching for emails. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's a limit to how many emails can be moved on bulk. 114,000 is impossible. It depends. It depends on your system. It depends on your IT setup. But maybe they'll move it in chunks. So yeah, it is doable. We have had large inboxes in our Getting Your Inbox to Zero workshops. Sometimes the tech does struggle, like sometimes the server struggles a little bit. But it can be done. You might just have to do it in chunks. But the decision making, I think the clear thing here is you don't want to be looking at each of those individually to make a decision about them individually. The chances are a large bulk of that is old, in that, yes, there might still be information that's interesting and you want to keep for reference, but there's unlikely to be any ongoing conversation going on there.
And Louise has asked, email seems to be a good way of getting the same information to lots of people for awareness and input. Is there a better way? And I would suggest that it's a really good way for sharing information, not always such a good way for getting input, depending on what you're going to do with that input and how it works. So yeah, it depends very much on what it is. But if you've got a meeting and you're meeting to discuss the information, then yeah, share it in advance and then have that discussion about what that all means and what people are going to do, what actions they're going to take. Could be a meeting, sharing the information and asking people to email their thoughts back to you if you're going to collate that, and depends how you're using it in the decision-making process, I suppose. But that's one of the things email is good for, right? Sharing information, making sure that everybody's got the same information at the same time. We're not saying email is bad, we're just saying we've all gotten into some bad habits, perhaps, about how we deal with it.
I would say, though, on that is if there is so much information being shared that nobody's actually paying attention, then we might need to be a little bit more ruthless, and maybe there's lots of useful information, but actually if nobody's paying attention to it, nothing's getting through, there's no value there. So again, going back to what's the value, what's the impact, it's maybe less might be more. So it might be sharing fewer things, might actually get people's attention better.
So Ross is asking, any tips on how to follow up on unanswered questions or emails so you don't lose track and forget? So yeah, you might want to create an area in your to-do list or in your email folder where you have things that you're waiting on. So things where you're waiting for a response, where you care enough about them to want to follow them up if you don't get a reply. And recognizing as well, I think that so many people, if you think about all those words that we use at the beginning to describe email: overload, too many, overwhelming, stressful, it might be that somebody didn't reply to your email, not because they don't want to or they don't care, they just haven't seen it amongst all the noise. And my suggestion in that case might be pick up the phone, have a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Anne's asking, what are your thoughts on usefulness of filing and folders for emails, or does it just delay decisions? So what we need to do is actually use folders to help us to make decisions. So when we're processing our emails, we're deciding, like, is this something that's just for information? Is this something I need to do? And actually putting them in the appropriate folders that way. So you're actually kind of dealing with, you're making a decision and moving along in that decision-making process, rather than just like, I'll come back to it later. So don't have a I'll think about it later folder. Use your folder structure as a way of making you decisive and moving that along, so you're not having to remake the same decision again. Because actually, a cluttered inbox, often I remember somebody mentioning once that clutter is basically a collection of unmade decisions. So if you have like 1,000 emails in your inbox, That's, could be 1,000 unmade decisions. And that's what feels stressful about email. But there isn't 1,000 actions you need to do. You need to make that decision about what needs actioning and what's just for saving and what can be deleted.
Rita's asking a question about the Inbox to Zero course and what that covers. So the Inbox to Zero course is about individuals and their behaviours around email. How do you deal with a large volume? We talk about the going in 3 times a day and what to do in those 3 times a day. So we give people the tools to manage their email once they've got it down to 0. And we also give people the tools, the techniques to reduce it down to 0. Rita also says there, does it discuss the manifesto? So that need for that kind of communication manifesto, I guess, has come out of that course. So the Inbox to Zero session is more for individual behaviours. There were definitely just some beneficial conversations to be had doing that as part of a team. But if you wanted us to come in and help you with your communication manifesto, we could do that, but it would be slightly separate to the Inbox to Zero.
Someone's asking if we can share the template for the comms manifesto. I'm wondering whether that is online.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. I know it's definitely in our academy. So any of you who are part of the Productivity Ninja Academy, if you've already done one of our workshops and you've got access to that, you can definitely find the comms manifesto on there. I know that when we ran our working from home sessions, we did share the comms manifesto. So, so I would probably say maybe have a search on our website, and if you can't find it, get in touch with us there, and I'm sure we can point you in the right direction.
Cool. Kate's asked what's in my Fixing Meetings book. So yeah, the book's not out till May. So the team who put the slides together were well ahead of the curve there. So
you've already written it, so you are the author.
Yeah, I should be able to answer that one. So just thinking, it's about meetings, how we make the meetings that we have more effective, and how we have less meetings in the first place, less people that are shorter. So that's my brief answer to that. We also do a session called Fixing Meetings, and that's a 3-hour in-house workshop exploring all of those things, and quite practical. We get you to kind of head to your calendar and start thinking about your meetings there and then.
Brilliant, great stuff. Thanks, Kimberly. Kimberly's just shared the link to the comms manifesto in the academy.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Okay, let's have a look at these questions. I'm just checking our participants list before I answer the questions to check that the people who have asked the questions are still here, because it would seem silly to share with you answers from things you don't want to know about. Richard is asking about different versions of Outlook and whether you use 365 in a browser or I don't have any thoughts on that, Grace. Do you?
I don't know. Sorry, Richard.
I think the same logic applies. It's psychology before technology. So I don't have an opinion about that particularly. I think it's changing your behaviours rather than the platform you're using to access the tool.
Other people on the chat might have other ideas. So if you've given that a go, then feel free to pop that into the chat to help Richard there. The other question that Richard's asked is it important to manage your sent items folder? My view is not as much as your inbox, because you know what's already gone out. Your inbox is what's come in. They're like potential decisions waiting for you to make them. Sent items, you've already done it. So no, is my short answer to that.
How do you change Outlook to have the calendar as the opening page instead of emails? I don't know off the top of my head. I do know that it's possible. So you might want to Google that one. Faye is asking, can you set times for your email to be online or offline? So you can work offline. There's a little button in the send and receive section. If you're dealing with stuff on your phone, there are various apps such as Quality Time that you can put on there to change or limit access to some of the tools you use. We've got a few anonymous questions here. So what's the Productivity Ninja stance on thank you emails? My stance is if it's just thank you, then it probably isn't going to be somebody's not going to log off the day and say to their family, I've got this lovely thank you email from my boss today. Like that, they won't have registered that they've received that. It's just noise. I would say no. But do thank people for good job well done. Use sentences and paragraphs and explain exactly what you're thanking them for.
Yeah. From a receiving point of view, I'd say one specific, like clear feedback thank you email is worth like 500 quick thank you, like literally just the word thank you in it. So maybe like go for quality over quantity, rather than feel like you have to reply. And we've worked with people who've gone, like actually organizations that have said, should we just see it as read, that we don't have to say thank you? We do email with just the words thank you in.
Lisa is asking, is the ability to add a link to book a 15-minute appointment a general function in Outlook? No, I use a tool called Time Trader. I think you can use something called Calendly, which is part of Outlook.
Yeah, I think Outlook does have its own appointment function now as well. So the ones that we use are different ones, but Outlook might have its own native one. I think Microsoft has got its own native book an appointment thing with me, but I'm not sure exactly how it works.
Alex is asking how, Alex has obviously read the book or come across the ideas somehow. Moving emails into the action file has become a full-time job. How do I manage the action emails? So that's essentially one of the things that Grace will cover on her 6 Weeks to Ninja. If you're a fan of the book, it's about using your second brain tool and being able to identify what's the next physical action for those things in your emails. So a couple of different places you might go to there to think about that, but essentially making a decision about what you need to do and recording that decision somewhere rather than just leaving the email lurking in your action file.
And also, if there are too many things coming in, and I think this also answers Nell's question about what to do with 300 emails a day. It's like sometimes there comes a point where there are just too many things. Like, yes, I could do something with all of these, but I don't have the capacity to do that. And so then we need to maybe set some parameters and maybe apply some ninja ruthlessness, and let some people down clearly rather than after the fact and feeling guilty about it. So maybe it is saying no a little bit more often. And that's something we will cover in 6 Weeks to Ninja as well.
Yeah, and Rita's asking, what if you send a suggestion to do something and there's no reply? Should you chase it or leave it? I guess it depends what you're suggesting they do. If you're suggesting they get a takeaway for their dinner, that's kind of on them and they can decide that, and you probably don't care enough to chase it up. If you're suggesting that they should, I don't know, stop some unpleasant behaviour, you're probably not going to have that conversation by email, but something that really needs to happen, then you're going to follow it up and chase it. So I think, again, this is an example of email is the tool and not the work. So it depends on the thing that we're talking about.
And also, it's a really good point about actually, if you're emailing someone with a suggestion, is there an action you want them to take? Are you wanting them to reply? If so, have you made that clear? Otherwise, if it's just like, here's a ball's in your court, like you decide what you want to do with it, then there's no need to reply. So I think that points also to how we language our emails as well, so that we're clear whether we want what action we want them to take, because ultimately that's why we're sending emails, right? We want people to take action, or we want to give them something that they can choose to take action with or not.
Okay, there's still a handful of questions here, and I think quite a lot of them have probably been asked using a different variety of words. So I'm just going to take a quick look to see if there's anything else there. Do these reductions in attention apply to other distractions like instant message? Yes, absolutely. That's a short answer. Grace, is there anything there that you can see that's not a duplicate of something we've asked already? We've got a question there about tidying up an inbox before you leave an organisation. I'm
going to channel my inner 6-year-old here and ask why.
Yeah.
Like what? No, like really, like why? What's the benefit of that? If there is a clear benefit to that, then yeah, go for it. But if there isn't, if it's just a case of like, oh, I'm just wanted to tidy it before I move on, then is it worth it?
Just pop your out of office on so that people know you're not there anymore.
Yeah.
There's an anonymous question about actions that can't be taken straight away, and where do I put those? So yeah, that's the kind of stuff we get into in the workshops that we do around Inbox to Zero and 6 Weeks to Ninja. The key thing is to decide what you're going to do and record that somewhere. Okay, I think we've pretty much answered everything.
Yeah.
There were still some people here, so lovely. If you do have any further questions, we'll just give you a couple of moments for you to post those if you have any further questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap the session up.
Yeah.
I love that, Peter.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
Great stuff. Ruth, the recording will be available. I'm not exactly sure where it will be. It's usually on YouTube. Our HQ team will look after that, and we'll find a way of letting you know.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Grace, do you think we should end things there?
I think so. Yeah. It's great seeing all the thank yous coming through.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let us know how you get on with it. This is all about putting things into action. So yeah, keep in touch, and yeah, see you soon.